Let's give a brief overview and history of Lent. Now, why is it called Lent? If you are from a Spanish speaking country or one of the languages that derive from Latin, you'll notice that the word for Lent derives from the Latin word quadragesimo, which means 40th, because it's a 40-day period. And this conforms to Greek, which in Greek it's called Serakasti, which is an abbreviation of Tessaserakasti, meaning 40th. So both in Greek and Latin, we're talking about the number 40, and that makes sense. We're keeping the 40 days. But in English, we call it Lent. Why do we call it Lent? Well, it derives from an old English word, lengthen, meaning spring season. And it's actually where we get the English word lengthen, like if you lengthen something. And that's because in the spring, the days lengthen. So an old way of referring to spring in Old English, and I think there's also a similar word in Dutch, is lengten or lenten, which means the days are lengthening. It's just the springtime. So unfortunately in English, we don't refer to the 40 days. We basically just call it a really ancient word for springtime. Now, the church fathers speak about Lent, and this is how we know that Lent goes all the way back to the apostles. St. Leo the Great, the Pope, he exhorts his hearers to abstain that they may, quote, fulfill with their fasts the apostolic institution of the 40 days. All right, so here we have an early church father, St. Leo the Great, and he's saying that we fast to fulfill the fasts of the apostolic institution of 40 days. That means he believes that the apostles instituted the 40 days of fasting. Historian Socrates and St. Jerome use similar language identifying the 40 days with the apostles. St. Irenaeus, another early church father, wrote to Pope St. Victor in Rome in the 2nd century, and he says that there's not only a controversy about the time of keeping Easter, but also regarding the preliminary fast before Easter. And he says, quote, for some think they ought to fast for 1 day, others for 2 days, and others even for several, while others reckon 40 hours, both of the day and the night of their fast. And some manuscripts say 40 days, but most scholars agree with 40 hours. And here, Irenaeus is talking about the 40-hour fast or the 1-day fast, usually from Good Friday or Maundy Thursday night until Easter Sunday. That is the pinnacle. That is the climax of fasting in the most difficult time. So even in Irenaeus, if he's not talking about the full 40 days, he is indicating an extreme fast right before Easter. We also see the practice of xerophagy, and that comes from Greek. Xeros means dry, and phagein means to eat. And it's the practice, particularly in the Eastern Church, of only eating dry food. Food without oil, often food that is not cooked. And in Eastern Christianity, xerophagy is the form of fasting observed during Lent and other fasts with vegetables cooked in water. Salt is allowed, together with things like fruits, nuts, bread, and sometimes honey. And in many cases, the tradition is considered basically just extreme veganism. And you'll find Eastern monks and ascetics practicing this ancient form. In the 35 canons of St. John the Faster, the penance of any monk caught in homosexual acts includes a xerophagic diet for 3 years along with other punishments. So you see in the early church that the fact that lay people were undergoing this extreme form of abstinence, basically eating raw vegetables, raw fruits, not cooked in any oil, and that the same penalty was placed upon monks who were caught in sodomy, reveals that the early church wasn't messing around. All right, the early church took holiness very seriously. We see in the festal letters of St. Athanasius in the year of our Lord 331, the saint enjoined upon his flock a period of 40 days of fasting prior to, but not inclusive of, the stricter fast of Holy Week. And secondly, that in the year 339, Athanasius, after having traveled to Rome and over the greater part of Europe, wrote in the strongest terms to urge the observance upon the people of Alexandria, Egypt, as one that is universally practiced. He says, quote, to the end that while in all the world is fasting, we who are in Egypt should not become the laughing stock as the people who do not fast, but take only pleasure in those days. So Athanasius was exiled because he defended Jesus was fully God, fully man. We have a new St. Thomas Institute video on Athanasius and the controversy in the 4th century over Arianism. You can watch that over in our church history certificate program. But while he was in exile, he went all over Europe. He visited all these Orthodox Catholic churches, dioceses, and he observed that during Lent, they were keeping a strict fast for 40 days. And that people back where he was from in Egypt were not that strict. And so he writes to them in the year 339 and says, listen, this is a universal practice in the church. We need to be faithful to fasting and abstinence during the 40 days before Easter. Another quote, true, fasting and abstinence form part of the duties of characterizing the season, but there was little or no uniformity in the matter of observance. On the contrary, different countries adapted a different regime. At Rome, it was customary to spend but 3 weeks immediately before Easter in fasting, abstinence, and praying. So that's a little bit of the earliest history, really into the 300s and 400s of Catholic history on Lent. You can see that they took it very seriously already with St. Irenaeus, who's writing in the 2nd century. They're talking about a 24, 48, or 40-hour hardcore, no food fast right before Easter, and then debates on how long that fast and abstinence is preserved before Easter, with Pope St. Leo I saying the 40 days come from the apostles. So our next video is going to be on the length of Lent, and then we're going to jump into the different forms of Lent, the medieval Lent, the Church Fathers Lent, which we've already kind of touched on, and then modern Lent. So stay tuned. We're now going to jump into how many days are in Lent. A lot of people say, is it 40 days? Is it 46 days? Can you cheat on Sundays? Can you skip on Sundays or not? We're going to answer that controversy in the next video. So thanks for being here in the New St. Thomas Institute. We'll see you in the next lesson. God bless.